There's something happening here, and what it is ain't exactly clear. And Retake Our Democracy in this radio show, and in its blog, and in its seminars, and in its alert system tries to get you the information you need so that you can be active in New Mexico and do it in an informed way. Good morning. You're listening to Retake Our Democracy, a 30-minute weekly show that airs at 8:30 a.m. each Saturday morning on KSFR 101.1 FM, and I'm your host, Paul Gibson. Today, I'll be interviewing Harold Pope. He's the candidate for New Mexico State Senate. He's in challenging incumbent Republican Sander Rue in District 23, a district that, while retained by Senator Rue since 2009, is definitely a winnable race. And Harold is the number 2 of Retake Our Democracy's 6 must-win races, number 2 priority. So we obviously are cheering loudly in his support. The week prior, I did a solo show as I felt that we all needed a bit of a pep talk. And so that show was more of a message of hope and a description of our multiple election strategies for 2020. I recommend you go to retakeourdemocracy.org and hover over the election menu and click there. We have 4 distinct strategies for the 2020 election, and one of them probably suits you. The week prior to that, we spoke with New Mexico State Representative Melanie Stansberry. And while we discussed many topics, the focus was clearly on water. And that's a specialty for Representative Stansberry. You can watch all of our past shows by going to retakeourdemocracy.org and hovering over the Actions and Events menu page and clicking on Retake Conversations. And if you're driving around town today and you don't catch all of this show, that recording will be up on the web probably by mid-morning on Saturday. While you're at our website, check out our election strategies. And we have a toolkit for how you can be more involved in this absolutely crucial campaign. Just go to our website and there is an election menu right in the banner. Click on it and you'll find all you need to be involved in the election here in New Mexico, in swing states and key Senate races. And we are especially excited about our new Get Out the Vote strategy. So check it out. Finally, I want to announce our September Zoominar. A panel discussion focused on what I am learning to be a truly shocking challenge facing New Mexico. We all realize that we are in a drought state, and that with global warming and the climate crisis looming, we face an existential threat here in New Mexico. What many of you may not really fully appreciate is the degree to which we are fiddling while New Mexico burns, and how even if we wanted to address this challenge, we would do so with both hands tied behind our backs. We will have the foremost water expert in the legislature, Representative Melanie Stansberry, on the panel, along with one of the foremost water management experts in the state, Norm Gaum, the former Interstate Streams Commission director. We will also have 2 other water quality and water control experts on the panel for a discussion that may well be the most important one Retake has ever moderated. So that Zoominar will be Tuesday, September 15th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And you can register for this panel by going to retakeourdemocracy.org, hovering over the Actions and Events page menu bar, and clicking on September 15th, New Mexico Water Crisis Zoominar. And please, please tell your friends. And so we're going to, sorry about that, with no further ado, we're going to turn to Harold Pope. Something sure is happening over here, and what it is ain't exactly clear. And we're gonna pause for a minute and restart this stupid
Battery medium. Connected to. Socialist lurking weirdly. Roxanne's iPhone.
What? There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear.
Yeah, something sure is happening here, and what it is ain't exactly clear. And Retake Our Democracy in this radio show, in its blog, in its Zoominar series, and in its statewide alert system tries to keep you informed and give you the information you need so you can be active and active in an effective way. Good morning. You're listening to Retake Our Democracy, a weekly 30-minute radio show that airs on KSFR 101.1 FM and streams from ksfr.org. I'm Paul Gibson, the host of Retake Our Democracy, and today I'm going to be interviewing Harold Pope, who is a Democrat challenging incumbent Republican Senator Sander Rue in state New Mexico Senate District 23, which is in Albuquerque. And Harold is one of our top priorities. We only have 6 priority races in the New Mexico State Legislative races this year, and he's number 2. And so we're obviously in support of his candidacy, and you're going to get to hear why when we talk in just a minute. The week prior, I did a solo show. I sort of felt like the troops needed a little bit of a pep talk. It's a pretty dispiriting time these days. And so I spent 30 minutes talking about reasons for hope, about evidence of change on both sides of the Atlantic, of important election wins on both sides of the Atlantic, and also what you could do in the election in 2020. The week prior, I did a show with Melanie Stansbury, New Mexico State Representative, who is an expert on water policy. And we spoke pretty much only about water policy in New Mexico. If you missed that show or any of our shows, you can watch them by going to retakeourdemocracy.org, going to the actions and events page, and hovering over that and going to Retake Conversations, and there you will see our various radio shows. I particularly recommend the one with Melanie Stansbury because it sort of sets the platter, if you will, for our September Zoominar. In September, we're having a panel discussion focused exclusively on water, and it's we all appreciate that we're in a drought state here in New Mexico. You couldn't ask for more evidence of it with the utter lack of monsoons this year, at least here in Santa Fe, Taos, and I think most places in New Mexico. We're facing a really serious challenge there, and making it far worse is the growing global warming, the looming climate crisis. We face an existential challenge here in New Mexico. And I was, in planning this Zoominar, I've had conversations with a number of hydrologists in the state and have come to realize and really appreciate just what a bind we are in. And while I think most of our listeners and most Retake supporters understand that we're a drought state, they may not understand the degree to which New Mexico must face this challenge with both hands tied behind its back. It's really shocking. We are not able to manage our own water system. And we are tied to century-old regulations that are simply not going to help us get this done. And so we will have on that Zoominar, again, Representative Melanie Stansberry, and joining her will be Norm Gaum. He's the former Interstate Streams Commission director, and he is also one of the foremost experts in the state on water policy and water management. And we're going to include two other water experts. Those individuals we've identified. We haven't confirmed their availability, but we'll have that up on our website. So you can go again to retakeourdemocracy.org, hover over the actions and events page, and click on the September 15th New Mexico Water Crisis Zoominar. And so that Zoominar will be again on Tuesday, September 15th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And it is going to be, I think, one of the most important conversations Retake has ever moderated. Finally, before we get to Harold, I would like to ask you to go to our election strategy on the website. It's right on the banner, election in the homepage banner. Click on it, and we have 4 distinct strategies for you to take advantage of to express yourself in what is an existential election. There's no way to overstate the importance of this election, and there's no way to overstate the degree to which Trump's maneuverings make it all the more difficult to ensure that we win this thing, and we have to win it by a landslide. So I would highly encourage you to go to retakeourdemocracy.org and click on the elections menu. And with that, we're going to turn to I had recorded a really good intro, and then I was sitting there. No idea how long it goes. Recognized it in the middle of the show. Melanie's, we wound up redoing the show. Yeah. But there's a lot of them that have to happen at once. And one of them is pausing the recording. And it doesn't pause very reliably. And it's still recording. So you click on it again, and it pauses, and then it goes to recording. Well, even if you wait a while, it doesn't. It is hard being me, but it's great having you with me for the ride. You got a text. Oh.
One on July 1st and one August 1st. So you check to see what actually went in or not. The VA account, which is not closed.
Oh, God. Hey, there you are, Harold.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing just fine. You're right on time.
Yeah, still got a little bit of that military in me, so.
Hope not too much.
No, I was happy to let that go. So I took about 9 months off, and I didn't do anything. No work, just relaxed. So.
Great. So I just recorded the intro so that that's done and put it on pause, but now it says it's recording. I'm going to have a nightmare editing. There's just this Zoominar. I was just explaining this to my wife. The Zoominar tool has a place where you click on, record and then pause and then record, and it, for some reason, it's not working very well. And you click pause and it looks like it pauses, and then you look at it and it's recording still. So, but I know how to get in there and tootle with it and make it work.
So but you can still edit off the recordings either way.
Right. Thank God.
Yeah.
So anyway, where we'll start is I'll just say, okay, let's get started. Welcome, Harold. And then I'll toss you the first question.
Great.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. Ready. And I think I'd like to try and keep it to the 30 minutes only because, you know, with some interviews, we go for a full hour. In fact, with Dar Jamal, we went for an hour and a half. But I think for the purposes of your using this, you're better off with a 30-minute where, you know, people will actually listen to it. You know, with all candor, Dar Jamal's an internationally known environmentalist and a best-selling author. So, you know, there's a lot of interest in him, and we want to make sure that your message gets out. So, and I am going to make that adjustment that you asked for. In fact, let me strike through it because you see that.
And we didn't have a problem. It's just my campaign manager. It's just that we've kind of focused on not making it about him. And so we didn't want to be like, well, he's reasonable or whatever. So that's all.
Right. Have you had much conversation with Peter Worth about your challenge?
I have.
And he's squarely into it, right? Because they're friends. They're good friends.
Yes. Actually, he called me after the primaries and let me know that he was behind me. And he has sent the checks, so he's financially behind it as well with his committee and with the PAC. So yeah, he's on board. He did tell me that though, that they are friends, but he said this is something different, and you know that they need me in the Senate. So I was glad to hear that, because that was a worry of mine even before I announced and thought about running. Some of the other Democratic senators that are currently serving were kind of making the comments like, well, Sander's a nice guy. And my response to them always was, well, it's not about if he's a nice guy. We're trying to get stuff done here in New Mexico. You guys can continue to be friends. I'm like, this is nothing personal. He's been nice to me when I talk to him. So it's nothing personal at all. So
yeah. I'm not seeing what question was that in?
That was on question, I believe it was number 6. And it's just
oh yeah, I see.
When you say one of the most reasonable,
right?
We just didn't want, but
yeah, I'm glad I stopped here because I will have to reframe the intro. I can't just cross that out because I then start. Yet he voted. So I'll just say Senator Rue has a history. A voting history that is not exactly supportive of most retake, positions, and including HB 51, and we'll go from there. Okay.
And I'll try to be as concise as I can, because I know when you start talking for that half an hour, but I think we'll be fine.
Don't be too concise, because there's nothing worse than getting to the end of the interview and going like, well, we got 15 minutes left.
15 minutes.
I had 3 youth on at one point. This was in the beginning of the show, and I would ask them this question and they would answer, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen that at some of the events.
Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, they get all nervous even on the Zoom and stuff. So
yeah. All right, so I got that off. Nothing in here that's going to make any noise. Down here, hit resume. Oh, it is recording. Sheesh, I'm going to have an edit here. All right, so I'm just going to say, okay, let's get started. Okay, let's get started. Welcome, Harold.
Well, thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah, I always like to let our guests introduce themselves. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to be seeking a position as senator in the New Mexico State Legislature?
Sure. So my name is Harold Pope Jr., and I'm seeking to be the next state senator in New Mexico, Senate District 23. I'm a retired Air Force officer. I started off in the enlisted ranks, retired in the summer of 18. I'm a former nonprofit board member and board chair. I'm also a former city appointee under Mayor Keller. Did that for a few months as well. And then I decided to make this run for office. But to me, I think it's important for folks to understand that it's not about a resume. That's something you can find on my website, you can find on LinkedIn. It's really about my background and where I come from. And that's really the basis of why I want to serve in the New Mexico Senate. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. By the time we hit middle school, my parents had divorced. So essentially I was raised by a single mother who worked nights as a waitress and as a bartender in a bowling alley. And that was a struggle for us, a struggle that many families here in New Mexico face. Because at night we were cooking dinner for ourselves, making sure that the homework was done, and my mom had to go to work to pay the bills. That struggle also did not help me later on in school. I struggled. I didn't have that mentorship. I didn't have that push and that drive to go to college. So when I did graduate from high school, I almost got in trouble with my environment, making bad choices. And that's when I decided to go into the military. And I did that. And it was the best thing in my life, the best choice. That's where I met diverse people, different people from all over the country, got mentors, got mentorship, and learned things from some of the officers that had went to college. And that actually pushed me to do the same. And I see so many folks out here in our community. When I look and I see our youth, I see our families, I see our seniors, I see, especially in our youth, folks that remind me of myself, that we're just not making those investments in our community. Because not everyone has the opportunity to go into the military or go off, and everyone shouldn't have to do that. We should be providing those opportunities here in New Mexico for everyone here, so that they don't have to go away to get that opportunity. This campaign is not about me. It's not about my opponent. It's really about us, and that's making investments in us here in New Mexico, something that I think we've been unwilling to do. So that's why I'm running, and thanks again, Paul, for having me, and Retake Our Democracy for just having this discussion and to talk about this campaign.
So let's get started. Welcome, Harold.
Well, thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So I always like to let our guests introduce themselves. So can you tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be a candidate for the New Mexico State Senate?
Sure. My name is Harold Pope Jr., and I'm hoping to be your next New Mexico State Senator in District 23, which makes up pretty much the furthest northwest area of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County. That's where the Senate District is. I'm a retired Air Force officer, started off in the enlisted ranks, and I'm a former board chair of a local nonprofit. And then I'm also actually a former appointee under Mayor Tim Keller with the city of Albuquerque. That information is all in my resume, it's all in my background, but I think what's more important is for you to understand me as a person and understand really the lens from what I look at from my life experiences. I'm the oldest of 5 children, and right around middle school, my parents were divorced. So essentially I was raised by a single mother. And that was the struggles that even many of our families face here, even here in New Mexico. My mother worked as a waitress and a bartender in a bowling alley. So we would come home from school at night and she was headed off to work. So we were responsible for making dinner, making sure the homework got done. And a lot of times, that didn't happen. But luckily, we made it out okay. I also had a younger brother who was a juvenile diabetic. So he was dealing with a lot of health issues. And that's a struggle that so many families are dealing with. By the time I graduated from high school, I really didn't do well. I was struggling. I had no motivation to go to college. And after some prodding from one of my uncles that married in the family that was in the Army, they pushed me to go into the Air Force. And that was really the best thing that ever happened in my life. Um, I got to meet people from all over the country. I was motivated, and I met other officers that actually mentored me, pushed me to go to college, pushed me to better myself. And that's what got me here today. And that's really why I'm running, because I really believe in mentorship. I really believe in helping our communities, and most of all, really investing in us. When we look at our families, when we look at our youth, when we look at our seniors, our veterans, we're just not doing enough to help them. Whether that be healthcare, whether that be high paying jobs, whether that be what we can do as far as transferring and transitioning to renewable energy. There's just so many issues in the state that we've been just sticking to the same status quo. This race is not about me. It's not even about my opponent. It's really about us, and it's really about investing in us, because I got in some people invested in me, especially mentors. And it goes to show that I look on this community, I see so many people that were at my stage, at their age, when they were 18, 19. And I'm the perfect example of, when you make that investment, this is what you get. You get someone that cares and listens and loves their community and wants to give back. And as New Mexicans, that's what we do. And that's what I want to do, serving as your next New Mexico State Senator.
Well stated, sir. I hope in January I get to run into you at the Roundhouse and call you Senator Pope instead of Harold.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to hear that, but you can still always call me Harold.
Let's start with this. What keeps you up at night? What are the things that especially trouble you about New Mexico, about our world?
So I think right now it's really the pandemic. Um, we got the stimulus checks from the federal government months back. It was not enough. Right now, the Senate isn't doing anything. And what I'm seeing now that's troublesome to me is, we're going to have people that are going to be getting evicted for not being able to pay their rent. You're going to have some people that are going to be losing their homes. This is going to be a long recession. When we look back at what happened in 08 and 09, it really took about 10 years for it to get us to get back. And we haven't even got to the end of this pandemic yet. So this is going to be ongoing, the job losses, and it's really going to hurt our community, and it's really going to hurt the less fortunate the most. We've seen the issues of really the inequities in this state, and with this pandemic, right, it really exposed it even, it really amplified the issue. Excuse me, sorry about it. It really amplified it. So that's what I'm concerned with. But I'm also specifically concerned about this virus because we don't know everything about it. Is this going to be a one-off virus to where it's just H1N1 and it goes away, or we find a vaccine? Or is this going to be a virus that mutates to where it's going to be something seasonal like the flu? We have to be prepared for that. And so we need to be addressing, healthcare especially, and then what we do from a public health standpoint, because we're not going back to normal. This is going to be a new normal going forward.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. What are one or two of the most important legislative issues that concern you, and how did you come to care so much about those issues?
So I would say the two issues are education and healthcare. So a little bit of my backstory: education is really the game changer. That's what got me to where I'm at. And we've been talking about the same issues in education since the late 90s. When I was going to UNM, when we talk about graduation rates and dropouts, right? So we have to do more for our students, do more for our educators. When we say educators, that means teachers, that means educational assistants, that means custodians, that means food service workers, counselors. We have to pay them. If we truly say that education is priority, and they are our front line, and we're seeing that in this pandemic, we need to be taking care of them. Pay and then giving them the infrastructure. We still have students and we still have kids that don't even have the books they need, to study. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and we actually have a mentorship program at Albuquerque High and Highland High School. We tutor some of the students, and they don't even have math books. That shocks me and amazes me that we're studying, and I ask them, well, do you have your book? And they're like, no, we just have these printouts. So we have to do a whole bunch more in education. And it also means if we're really going to make a change here, we really have to fully fund early childhood education, and not only supporting that child from birth, but giving that support to those parents, because those parents or that single parent has probably not had the proper education themselves. Then I would also say healthcare. Healthcare is still a huge issue. And yes, we're waiting on the federal government to do more, but we have folks that are covered by the ACA. And then luckily we were able to get the Medicaid expansion here in the state, but we still have that group that make too much for the Medicaid expansion, but the ACA costs are far too expensive to cover them.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that here in the pandemic. I really like what I'm seeing with the Health Security Act, especially the mobility part, because I believe that's what's going to really also be a boom to our economy. We have so many folks that are in jobs or in careers that maybe they might want to start their own business. They might want to be an entrepreneur, but they can't take the risk because they're worried about healthcare for their families. So
Right.
those would be probably the top two issues. I think coming up next, but it's really cross-sectional with education and healthcare, economy and jobs, of course, with what's happened in the pandemic. But those are areas that I'm really focused on.
So I heard you mention the Health Security Act, and I'm sure you know we're big supporters. I was told by one campaign manager that that you were running too far, too progressive of a campaign, and for a district that is reasonably moderate. It's not that moderate. It's a 52.4, I think, Democratic Performance Index. Melanie Stansberry's in a 47.8. So she won, you can win. But how do you respond to that, that recommendation or that comment?
I would just say that when we talk about policy stances and issues that we're running on, I believe that we're just right with the American people and New Mexicans as well. So when we talk about protecting reproductive rights, diversifying the economy, properly funding public and early childhood education, when we talk about renewable energy transition, public safety reform, protecting pre-existing conditions, providing more health care to all New Mexicans, behavioral health, higher minimum wage. These are progressive issues, and these are progressive policy stances, but these are issues that New Mexicans agree with as well. So for me, it's not about running too progressive. It's about these are the issues that I think New Mexicans care about and that we have not been willing to actually do something about here in the state. So that's why I'm running on these issues.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see Democrats constantly fleeing from taking those stances out of fear that, it's too progressive. And yet I did a post a few years ago that showed a chart that showed opinion polls on all these progressive positions, and anywhere from 60 to 80% of Americans agreed with them. And yet we continue to run away from those things.
Yeah, I think unfortunately people have just put labels on things, and if without hearing what the issue is, if you just throw the label out first, maybe people don't want to listen. So sometimes I don't use the label, but I'm going to run on those issues.
Okay. I want to remind our listeners that it is in times like these during the pandemic that KSFR is more important than ever, offering you timely news and alerts, and also just entertainment and a wide range of programming to keep you sane when holed up at home. So for those of you who can afford it, please consider making a contribution and think of it as your ticket for admission to programming like this and Retake and Democracy Now! And so many other important radio shows, Richard Wolf. But save a little bit of money to be able to kick in some change for the Harold Pope campaign. So, and today that's who we're speaking with, Harold Pope, who is challenging Senator Rue for Sander Rue for a seat in the New Mexico State Senate. So we're going to get back to that conversation. And, you know, Retake has a big presence at the Roundhouse, and I'd run into you there all the time. You know, Sander Rue has a history of voting in opposition to so many of our bills. He voted against the HB 51 bill to decriminalize abortion and against virtually every other priority retake bill over the past 3 sessions that we've been deeply involved. So in your campaign, are there any specific bills that you like to reference as being bills he has opposed? Or is your campaign solely focused on what your positions are?
So as I stated before, you know, really the campaign is not about him, and not even me specifically, but what we do for us. So I like to really highlight what we're going to really be fighting for. And it's kind of some of the issues that I've already stated before. You know, we need to be protecting reproductive rights. That means getting rid of the criminalization, the abortion ban bill that's currently on the books. It's about diversifying the economy and how we transition to renewable energy, not only for our environment, but actually creating jobs. Why aren't we actually selling the energy, but actually manufacturing the components here and being a leader across the nation? When we talk about properly funding public and early childhood education, these are things that I want to do. When we talk about public safety reform, right now with what's going on in the country, the Black Lives Matter movement, there is still some public safety reform and also some justice reform that we need to be doing here in our state. And then, as I mentioned before, healthcare. We need also more government transparency. I know my opponent has been push for that as well. But we also need to be talking about legalizing cannabis as well. You know, providing some safeguards to where our youth isn't having that, and that's not going to be this great generator for revenue to replace oil and gas with the downturn. But I think we can find ways to regulate this, get it off the black market, decriminalize it fully, but also maybe use it as a way to use our national labs and our research universities to actually have build a test that actually tests to see if people actually are actually inebriated or high off of marijuana. I mean, I know there's sobriety tests out there for the police to use, similar to what they do for alcohol, but that could be a game changer worldwide if we could develop some technology like that.
I've never heard that suggested. It's interesting. We're recording this on Thursday afternoon, so there have been 3 nights of Democratic National Convention. What are some of the highlights for you? And is it such a weird thing, so different from past in-person assemblies? What do you think of what's happened so far?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been strange. So I think the benefit is everything's been scheduled. I think in the past you have everybody up there speaking, everything gets delayed, right? And you don't know really what's going on. It's pretty much on C-SPAN all day. This has been virtual. This is kind of how we've all been having to function on Zoom and on the web. But I think it's went very well, especially for a virtual event. There hasn't been too many technical hiccups. I think it's been great. I think they've also focused on really uniting us and really focusing on defeating Trump, but also understanding that it's not about just him. We also need to change the U.S. Senate as well. But also bringing in everyone, regardless of party affiliation, and just pointing out what's gone wrong in this country and how it's not right. So I really like what I'm seeing there. I think this also goes into what we are going to experience here in the election here in November within the state and even this race. I think people are really hungry for change. And they want it, and they don't want the status quo. And we need really a transformational change here in New Mexico. And if we're going to do that, we're going to have to show up in November and make that happen, because We need not minuscule change, we need transformational change if we're truly going to make this a New Mexico for all of us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I actually have found it to be much more engaging, the convention, than prior ones. All the balloons and hoopla and cheering every phrase from a person says, and I'm for justice. It's like there's just not that. It's not that engaging. We were at the convention in Philadelphia, my wife and I, and it was, as you said, just like it just went on endlessly, whereas this is nice and concise. I read recently in the New Mexican that you would be the first African-American New Mexican state senator. I hadn't realized that. Did you realize that when you threw your hat in the ring, and do you feel that your race is a factor to many voters in your district?
So I actually didn't know. So when I actually announced, I had a kickoff with Congresswoman Deb Haaland, and actually her staff brought it up to me, and I had no idea. So that's not the reason I was running. But it was also shocking at the same time, because you're like, wow, the state's been in that existence, and we've never had an African American in the state Senate. And I realized that we only have a population of about, they say, around 3% in the state. But I still found that shocking, because once again, I'm all about promoting a New Mexico that's for all. And we need to be making sure that we're inclusive of everyone, whether it be politics, in the public, or even in the private sector, because representation matters, and having that voice. So I take pride in that. It's not the reason I'm running, but my hope is that I'm not the last, and I hope that I motivate others to step up. And there's probably some other groups that have not been represented in the state Senate, and I hope I motivate them to do that as well.
That's great. That's great. The BLM movement is achieving pretty unprecedented level of credibility and sustained presence in the media. Yet we've seen that kind of thing before, maybe not as sustained as we're seeing it right now. And then it kind of goes away, and we don't seem to make much progress. Do you have much confidence that this time the traction is going to be meaningful and we're going to get somewhere?
I actually do. And I think you're correct. I think the movement is at an all-time high right now. Before we had a lot of detractors. You had folks, were quick to jump out with the all lives matter and find ways to discredit what people were talking about. I think this time, and unfortunately there have been videos before, but I think this really not only woke up the nation, but the world. When you see protests in countries like Germany and France, I mean, this is a worldwide issue that people cannot ignore. And then we've had people of all races, of all faiths join in on this. We might not agree on how we go forward, but I think for the most part, people agree that there's a problem. Even the folks that are in denial and that are fighting against this, I think they know in their heart there's an issue. They just want to fight it. And that's what happens, I think, in civil rights issues. You're just always going to have those folks. I also love to see that it was part of DNC as well. They've embraced the movement. Think about it, 4 years ago, they didn't even, most of the DNC and members of the party did not even want to talk about Black Lives Matter. So that's another reason that gives me hope. But I think we need to move from the marching and to actually how we're going to address systemic and institutional racism in the country. I like what I'm seeing from the corporate world. They're saying Black Lives Matter, they're putting it on their websites. But my next question is, what are you doing within your corporation?
Yeah.
Who is serving on your boards? Because once again, let's go back to inclusion. Let's talk about representation. We need things that are really going to change in the public and in the private sector. And this cannot just become a Black Lives Matter slogan. We need action.
Okay. Well, Retake has quite a few volunteers, and there are volunteers who like to work on campaigns. And some may be listening right now. And so what are some of the ways that volunteers can help your campaign, and how can they reach it?
Great, thanks. Thanks for this opportunity. So contributions are always important, especially now in a pandemic, and really because it's not safe to knock on doors. And I don't believe it's really going to be safe to do that before election. Hopefully I'm wrong and we can do that. But that means that we're going to have to use more mailers and pay for more digital ads, which costs more money. At the same time, I understand folks are struggling. I mean, we're in a pandemic. So I don't even like asking for contributions. It's really tough. It's just, that is the part of campaigning that I do not enjoy. And I have no problem saying that or hiding that. Everybody who knows me, I let them know that. But what we can do is use volunteers. We can still do phone banking, and we're doing virtual phone banking, and we're doing virtual training. And we can get you the list to make calls. And you could be anywhere in the state to do that. What I would like you to do, if you're interested, you can go to our website at www.popefornm.com. Popefornm.com is the website. And then click on the top in the volunteer tab, and there you can sign up. And my field director will reach out to you and get you the information, set you up with training, and have you make some calls. This is an important race, not only for the folks in the district, but for the entire state. We see what's happened for years in this state with the majorities we have, but we have such a huge opportunity with what happened in the primaries, to where not only can we retain our majorities of the 26 and 16, but if we could get to 28, if we could get to 30, that could be huge, to where we could really match with all the hard work that they're doing in the House. A lot of the legislation will not be getting killed in committees. So
Yeah.
please consider contributing if you can, but most of all, if you could sign up to make calls, because once again, it's going to be hard to reach voters without knocking on doors, and we just need to make as many calls as possible.
I really want to thank you for being with us today, Harold. We will continue to beat the drum to get people to your website and to contribute to or volunteer for your campaign. And I really look forward to seeing you at the Roundhouse, hopefully in person, so that but you'll be on the other side of the table when I'm testifying. And I'm sure in those instances, I'll be testifying for something that you won't need to hear from me, because you will have made up your mind in the right way. So thank you so much for being with us, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. Bye-bye.